Welcome back to This Is Real. As promised in last week's video, I'll be detailing my top 15 3DS games. These games are handpicked by me and only me, so this list is just my opinion. Some ground rules do apply. I will not be selecting games that become obsolete in this day and age with better sequels. So, titles like Mario Kart 7, Animal Crossing New Leaf, and Super Smash Bros. For Nintendo 3DS will not be included in this list. With that out of the way, here are my honorable mentions. Coming in at number 15, it is Mario & Luigi Dream Team. This quirky Mario RPG series was not a stranger on the 3DS, with 2 new titles as well as 2 remakes. Dream Team retains the charm of what makes the series so good, such as the series' signature brand of humor, fun and lovable characters, and intense execution-heavy turn-based combat system. What sets Dream Team apart from the other predecessor is its setting. In this game, you get to uncover and explore Pillow Island as well as the Dream World, which provides great diversion as the way to traverse and interact with the two worlds are very different. Although Dream Team is not close to being the pinnacle of the series, that honor goes to Bowser Inside Story, it is still one of the most charming adventures on the 3DS system. This charming adventure through Pillow Island is not one to be missed, especially if you are a fan of the Mario RPG series. Coming in at number 14 is Professor Layton and the Miracle Mask. This game marks the first outing of the Professor Layton games on 3DS. I've always been a fan of the Professor Layton series since the DS days, and Miracle Mask is a great sequel to all of them. The jump from DS hardware to 3DS is very noticeable. The game mainly used a lot of 3D models. Even though some animation can feel a little awkward and jarring here and there, it doesn't really detract from the whole visual style. Overall, the game looks a lot better than the DS counterparts. The puzzle solving gameplay is practically untouched. Get it? Untouched. If you have played any of Layton's games before, you know exactly what to expect. For the uninitiated, in this game, the main gameplay is solving puzzles whether you randomly find one or as you progress through the story. Speaking of story, Miracle Mask features my favourite Layton story out of all 6 games, as I enjoyed the story beats that dealt with the lovable professor's past, and overall it's not a super convoluted tale compared to the rest of the Layton series. My number 13 pick is Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon. Alongside Mario & Luigi Dream Team, Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon was a big 3DS release in the year of 2013. If you are a big Nintendo fan at that time, you will know that 2013 was also known as the year of Luigi. Luigi's Dark Moon is the long-awaited 12 years in the making sequel to the fan-favourite GameCube launch title, Luigi's Mansion. I only played this game after finishing Luigi's Mansion 3 on the Nintendo Switch. Although I feel that Luigi's Mansion 3 is a better game overall, Dark Moon is still a pretty good standalone title in today's context. The puzzle solving and ghost hunting gameplay is still as fun as the successor. One divisive part about the game is its progression system. The game runs in a mission format, where your goal is just finishing selected missions in a level, where after finishing a mission, you are forcefully booted out of the mission. For me personally, I didn't mind it that much at first, and the separation of set mission allows for natural break time in a handheld console experience. However, it did become quite irritating seeing the loading screen again and again, and this format doesn't really reward exploration, which was a key part of the original's charm. One aspect that really deserves praise is the presentation. Dark Moon is a really good looking game on the 3DS. This game's visuals still holds up to this day, with great use of lighting and environment. The sound design deserves mention too. The nervous humming of Luigi as well as the creepy, uneasy soundtrack really sets the mood and atmosphere of each mansion really well. For my number 12 pick, we have The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds. Some backstory, I received this game as a birthday present from one of my closest friends. I was still riding high after just finishing my first Zelda game, which was Ocarina of Time a few months back, so I was looking forward to playing Link Between Worlds. And this game did not disappoint at all. I remember one of the key points that Nintendo touted with this game was the breaking of Zelda convention of linearity dungeons. This newfound freedom in exploration and progression was pretty refreshing at the time. As one of the main problems I found in Ocarina of Time was that I often find myself searching for walkthroughs to try to progress through Ocarina of Time. In Link Between Worlds, however, I rarely ever get stuck, and I know exactly what I needed to do to progress through the game, which was great. This breaking of Zelda convention mentality will eventually be turned up to 11 in Breath of the Wild, where Hyrule felt completely free. However, I actually like Link Between Worlds' half-step approach to breaking Zelda convention a lot more than Breath of the Wild, as Link Between Worlds retains the core dungeon progression system, where Breath of the Wild might have went a little bit too far in pushing Zelda convention. But anyway, Link Between Worlds is a really solid action-adventure game and my personal favourite 2D Zelda game ever. The only gripe I have with this game is that since this is a pseudo remake of A Link to the Past, after playing it, it kind of makes A Link to the Past really obsolete. I've tried over the years to play A Link to the Past, but the combat just feels extremely clunky, compared to the responsive nature of this game. It's kind of sad, as I always wanted to be one of those people who play the SNES classic. Fingers crossed for a Link to the Past remake at some point in our future. Maybe next year, 35th anniversary? For number 11, we have Shovel Knight. What's there to say about this game that hasn't already been said? If there's ever an indie game hall of fame out there, Shovel Knight will be inducted in day 1. When you think about some of the best indie games in the last decade, Shovel Knight is always in the conversation alongside many other hard hitters. For the uninitiated, Shovel Knight is an action platformer inspired by the NES era of platformers like Mega Man, with tight controls, challenging level design, and an amazing Famicom 8-bit inspired soundtrack to boot. This is seriously one of the best platformers I've ever played. For those Shovel Knight fans out there, I highly recommend you to read a book called Blood, Sweat and Pixels by industry reporter Jason Schreier, where one of the chapters relate to the development and behind the scenes at Yacht Club Games. It is seriously a good read. Listening to the founding and development of Shovel Knight really makes me respect Yacht Club Games a lot more. Anyway, this game just barely not reached top 10, as I feel that this game is better played on a proper controller with a D-pad that's not located at a weird angle. If you haven't picked up this game, please do yourself a favor and get it. It's on all major platforms. Just cracking it at top 10 is Kid Icarus Uprising. Kid Icarus Uprising is a high-octane third-person shooter that features one of the best presentations on a 3DS system. Kid Icarus Uprising is often lauded for the amazing on-rail shooters, sky sections, where action is tight and well-paced with many amazing set pieces one after the other. The land sections are pretty divisive as the action scratches to a crawl and isn't as high octane. Personally, I think the land sections are pretty decent overall, with some levels including great clever level design which kept the fun going. Even if there are down moments in this section, the clever and witty dialogue always kept me going, especially since this game does not take its universe too seriously, with references to other works and occasional fourth wall breaking banter. The controls are also a big talking point. It's definitely not as intuitive as any other pick up and play 3DS games. You almost need 3 hands just to play it. Personally, I didn't mind it, as if one was to play on a 3DS stand included with this game, the gameplay is still pretty solid. And another good part about playing with the stand is that the 3DS will be stationary, which allows the 3D effect to pretty much stay intact. And boy, if you cannot tell already, this game is really beautiful on the 3DS. Probably one of the best visual showcases on the 3DS. And in 3D, it is downright mesmerizing at times. The soundtrack is also really good, complementing the stellar visual and high action gameplay. The impact of this game is pretty massive for the whole Kid Icarus franchise. To say this game revived the whole franchise would be a grave understatement. Uprising alone gave so much personality to these characters through amazing voice acting and dialogue. Characters like the energetic and illiterate Pete, the witty goddess Palutena, and the childish and snarky Veridi truly felt alive in this game. In fact, one of my favourite Easter eggs of Smash Ultimate is the Palutena's guidance, where the trio will often have very clever and humorous banter just discussing about the fighters in Smash. And that is solely because of the characterization featured in Uprising. This game has really built out so much lore and world building in this universe. The franchise is basically ripe for another entry in this franchise. Let's just hope Nintendo does something with this IP after what Sakurai has established in Uprising. For my number 9, it is Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney Dual Destinies. If it ain't clear by now, I'm a big Ace Attorney fan. Dual Destiny played a very big part in the decision of me acquiring a 3DS in 2013. The 1-2 punch of 6th generation of Pokemon and the 5th entry in the Ace Attorney series basically pushed me over the edge of buying a 3DS. Dual Destinies also had the honour of being my very first eShop purchase. Ace Attorney fans are pretty much split on the opinion of this title, and I can understand why some Ace Attorney fans are a little bit disappointed. But coming from the disaster that is Apollo Justice Ace Attorney, I generally really like this new outing on the 3DS. First off, I really like the graphics of this game. The environment and background is really the standout compared to its 2D counterparts from the GBA/DS era. Where the DS background can feel very flat and boring, the background in Dual Destinies are really more rich and populated, especially with the extra real estate found on the wider screen of the 3DS. The few anime cutscenes sprinkled throughout the game is also very well done. The only lacking part about the presentation, at least to me, is the voice acting.
Wait, what do you mean by a leave?
The voice actor feels very miscast. All the characters felt really flat and cheesy, and it's not those it's so bad it's kind of good voice acting like the old Capcom games. It's just very mediocre overall. Secondly, I really appreciate the quality of life improvements to investigation. The investigation section have pretty much been streamlined with very obvious hints as to how to progress through this section faster to get to the highlights, which are the courtroom sequences. One downside of this approach is that you can't investigate every scene, which limits some world building and character building opportunities which the original trilogy was known for. This was thankfully changed in the other 3DS outings Spirit of Justice, where you can investigate every scene and get more banter. Anyway, without spoiling this visual novel, I would say I really like the plot of this game. All the cases are really well integrated in the grand scheme of things. Now for those who are new to this franchise, please start all the way at the beginning with the first game before working your way down to the latest game. For my number 8, it is Dragon Quest VIII Journey of the Cursed King. Just like Fire Emblem Three Houses, the reason why I gave this game a shot was because Hero was revealed as a DLC fighter for Smash Ultimate, and I wanted to try out a Dragon Quest game before Dragon Quest XI's comes out the same year. This is a very charming adventure where the party's goals and motivation are very well established just from a few hours into the game. The plot is pretty well paced throughout the whole game with quite a lot of standout locales and set pieces. Being my first Dragon Quest game, I was pleasantly surprised by how much the game toys with tone. On one end, the game usually strikes a rather not serious tone with weird characters, subplots, and nonsensical moves and animation. However, when the game needs to tell a dark, grimy, sad story, it's able to deliver with so much finesse and emotion. The tone and atmosphere is really well done. One of my favourite aspects of the game is the over-the-top voice acting. It is not a super realistic voice direction, and I absolutely love it. It's just so ridiculous how some of these accents sound. Every time I go to a new area, I'm actively looking forward to hearing the super cheesy voice acting.
I dreamt that some people came to town with a strange creature. It was sort of halfway between a human and a monster. And
I had zero expectation going into this game, which is why I was quite surprised, as this game just oozes classic retro style. From the 8-bit sound effects to the elements such as the horrible inventory management and needing to go to church to revive party members and leave curse. And that is not a bad thing per se, but it definitely feels pretty basic. It feels kind of like a normal JRPG, which I mean is kind of fitting since this is a historical first RPG series. However, I was definitely expecting a lot more in the turn-based combat system. There really aren't any gimmicks or anything interesting with combat. It's just a very basic JRPG battle system, which was a letdown for me, especially since in the same year I played many other JRPGs which toy with many mechanics, such as Octopath Traveler for instance, which had a really good combat system. Anyway, if you're looking for a meaty full-length console experience JRPG to play on the go, Dragon Quest VIII is a solid recommendation. Speaking of great combat system that toys with mechanics, my number 7 is Bravely Default. Bravely Default is one of my favourite JRPG games that I got to play this year, and that is solely because of the gameplay. At the heart of the game strategy is picking the right job for each character. Each party member can don a job which affects character stats, abilities, spells, and equipment. Alongside the main job, every character can also be equipped with an additional side job which allows him or her to use commands outside his main job. So for example, you can have the main job of a merchant and yet still use commands from the black mage job. Alongside that, you can also add additional passive abilities earned from other jobs, which creates a huge amount of experimentation and planning to try to form the most OP combo. And I haven't even talked about the battle system yet. The integral part of Bravely Default's battle system is the command Brave and Default. Brave allows the user to do multiple turns at once at the cost of a BP each. Default conversely makes the user unable to move and will instead gain a BP. The game demands you to learn the ins and outs of this battle system. A lot of time before you find the right strategy, it's very easy to get a game over. But once you master this system and use it to the full potential, you'll feel like a complete tactical genius. I have to address the major complaint of this game, which comes in the second half of the game, where let us say it can be quite repetitive. I have seen multiple YouTubers who recommend not to complete the true ending, and personally I have to disagree with them. Please, if you do pick up this game, finish the true ending. If not, you are robbing yourself out of one of the best finales of a game. I swear when I got to the end, it was all worth it. Just stick it out. I'm currently playing Bravely Second, the direct sequel to this game, so there's a strong chance I'll be doing a video review of Bravely Default. So subscribe if you want to see that video. For my number 6 is Super Mario 3D Land. This is the first 3DS game I bought with my shiny 3DS XL console, so it holds a pretty special place in my heart. What really sets this game apart from its many Mario games is the hardware 3DS itself. This game is still the definitive showcase of the stereoscopic 3D effect. This game is designed with the 3D effect in mind, all the levels really utilize the 3D effect really well. Situations like an overhead view where you have to gauge how to land Mario works perfectly well with the 3D effect. I swear this is the only one game where I played in 3D from start to finish. This game nowadays is also known for its brand new gameplay style, which is often categorized as a 2D Mario game but in 3D, so like 2.5D-ish. I know Nintendo has officially categorized the 3D Mario games into two sections. Lumping Galaxy 1 and 2 with 3D Land and 3D World has the same category known as 3D Course Clear Mario. But 3D Land gameplay is really different from all its 3D predecessors. The level design is really a lot more linear with a clear start and finish to each level. Also, world map and progression is completely ripped from the 2D games. Generally, I like the nature of the gameplay. It's pretty snappy and get to the point, but it does start to feel a little bland and basic when compared to the more epic adventures like 64 or Galaxy for instance. Time hasn't really been too kind to my opinion of this game. It used to be one of my favourite Mario games of all time, and it's a game that I put in a lot of time in, almost to 100% completion. However, after revisiting this game again, especially after my time with the newly released 3D All-Stars, this less ambitious and very easy Mario game definitely feels a little bit lacking. But nevertheless, that's just coming from a critic point of view. If the fact that I cannot put this game down to write the rest of the other top 5s is any indication, this game is still a ridiculously fun time with great post-game challenges that continuously throw new ideas at you. Completely worth going back to play it, especially for the 3D effect. We are finally at the top 5 guys. Coming at number 5 is Radiant Historia Perfect Chronology. This Atlas JRPG is a goddamn masterpiece. The one aspect I like to highlight is the plot. Just earlier, I made a statement that the reason why I love Dragon Quest VIII is because its goofy, wacky, zany style. While in Radiant Historia, it is the complete opposite. Its tone is extremely exclusively serious. After all, it tackles some very mature themes like war. It doesn't mean there isn't any lighthearted moments. There are, but they are very few and far between. It's a story that wants you to take it seriously and not just some wacky Japanese game. Another reason why I love the plot so much is its implementation of time travel and timeline jumping. After an early part of the game pretty much splits into two separate timelines where you have to continuously jump between the two to progress. Without any spoilers, I will just say this plot device is used really well in this game and story. Time traveling and split timelines fiction has always interested me as a person in general. It is my personal favourite sci-fi subgenre in any medium. But it's really through video games that I feel it can be best executed in, as you get ample time to explore each path and decision. Spoiler alert for the remaining top 5 lists, all the games from now on will get to deal with this theme of time. So yeah, I didn't even know how it worked out this way, but I guess coincidental works in special ways I guess. And there's also this simple yet deep battle system that never gets old. To put it simply, in this battle system, your main goal is to send all your enemies into one particular grid and just wheel tons and tons of combo on this one square, effectively dealing a ton of damage to multiple enemies all at once. I swear, especially towards the later portion of the game, where you land up to a level 9 and above combo, the high you get is unreal. Enough said. This game absolutely deserves its own standalone video in the future. I will just say, please go get this game if you have not played it. For my number 4, it is the 3rd generation Pokemon remakes, Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. I 100% understand that this is just nostalgia overdrive at this moment. The original 3rd generation Ruby, Sapphire and Emerald is what I grew up with, probably one of the earliest video games I ever played and finished. The Game Boy Advance and the Pokemon games basically represented my childhood, and I strongly believe Auras to be the best 3DS games out of all the bunch. These remakes retold the story of Hoenn perfectly while fleshing out some of the more weaker moments of the original tale. It may be just because I'm very familiar with the original games, but the pacing in Auras felt really good, with not a lot of down moments. Compared to Sun and Moon, I feel like Sun and Moon has way too many down moments. Game Freak also revamped the secret base system, which was a ton of fun. Exploring strangers' secret bases online and designing your own mini gym never felt old. The sneaking mechanic is also very fun and rewarding, which result in shiny hunting and hidden abilities and rare Pokemon to be a lot more fun and accessible. As someone who was quite versed in competitive battling at the time, Auras also marks a lot of interesting new meta development, such as for the first time an Uber tier had a ban list because of how overpowered Mega Rayquaza was. I also love how through this remake, Game Freak updated some weaker Pokemons who have suffered from generations of power creep to get their own Mega evolutions. Once mediocre Pokemon like Beedrill, Pidgeot, Altaria and Lopunny all found new places in the meta, I really love the meta at that point. The only major gripe, and it's a pretty major gripe, is the lack of quality post-game in terms of the missing Battle Frontier from Emerald. The exclusion of the Battle Frontier is really unforgivable. At the end of the day, I have made a lot of fun memories in Auras. You'll truly only get to have this nostalgia trip feeling once, and it's still a fun time even in this age. I will go so far to say it's better than what they achieved in Sun and Moon and Sword and Shield. For my number 3, I'm gonna be cheating here guys. I'll be putting in 2 games. They are the N64 remakes, Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time 3D and Majora's Mask 3D. I know, I broke a cardinal sin around the YouTube list making community. Almost everyone do not put remakes onto a top 10 console game list, but once I factor in Radiant Historia into the equation, it's just hard to ignore Auras and the Zelda remakes. Sorry if I disappointed y'all. Anyway, let's get back to the list. What else is there to say about these games that have not already been said? These 2 games basically highlight a whole new era in the late 90s. Ocarina of Time is the highest rated video game ever, period. The legacy of this first 3D Zelda is still being talked about in this day and age. It seems like everyone and their mother have a retrospective on this classic, and I'm not an exception. This game had a great impact on me growing up. Majora's Mask is an instant cult classic among Zelda fans. It might not have attained huge success when it launched, but over the years, the sentiment has changed, and many regard it as one of the best Zelda games ever. For me, I've always tried to play Majora's Mask over the years, but due to its pretty difficult 3-day time system, I was never able to finish it on a Wii Virtual Console. In Majora's Mask 3D however, Nintendo made some changes to make it more streamlined and accessible, which ultimately allowed me to enjoy the classic for the first time. I know there are quite a few people out there who are very upset at the changes, which I can totally understand. On the other hand, Ocarina of Time 3D is a very faithful remake of the N64 classic. It retains everything that made the original so fun, while only addressing some of the more common complaints, for example the infamous water temple. These 2 remakes on the 3DS did a very good job in updating the graphics and adapting the gameplay on the 3DS, making them the definitive version to play now. At the end of the day, these 2 games deserve to be played. There's a reason why these 2 games are so highly regarded. If you have never played these 2 games before, you owe it to yourself to try it. But would I recommend the remakes on 3DS? Well, it depends on when you're watching this video. Because as of this writing, November 2020, I'm predicting that there will be a re-release of these 2 Zelda games on the Switch next year, as next year will be the 35th anniversary of the Legend of Zelda series. So fingers crossed, hopefully we get Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask HD remaster. My number 2 best 3DS game of all time is Fire Emblem Awakening. For those of you not familiar with the behind the scenes of this game, let me just briefly touch on it. So before this fateful game, the sales figure of the Fire Emblem franchise had been declining over the years. So before this game was gonna release, Nintendo gave Intelligent System an ultimatum. If Awakening doesn't sell 250,000 copies, the entire Fire Emblem series would come to an end. With the whole Fire Emblem franchise riding on this one release, the development team threw everything but a kitchen sink into this one release. And so did it pay off? Well, if you have been around for the last few years, you would know it paid off big time. Awakening will go on to sell past 2 million copies, cementing its place in Nintendo's first party IPs. And when you look at this game holistically with their backstory in mind, you can tell the designers were really trying their best to make this the best Fire Emblem game up to that point. When I think about the Fire Emblem franchise, one of the main stigma is that it is extremely difficult and unforgiving, mainly targeting the super hardcore tactical strategy crowd. I would know since I owned the GBA Fire Emblem game, that game was way too hard for 12-year-old me at that point to finish. But one of the key messages that keep getting pushed by marketing and basically anyone who played Awakening is that the game is very beginner friendly with a lot of accessible options, which ultimately convinced me to pick up this game, and I absolutely fell in love with this series ever since. There are a lot of things this game got right. Firstly, Fire Emblem Awakening tells a pretty good and interesting story with many twists and turns along the way. It is a gripping tale right from the first cutscene of the game, with many questions and mystery waiting to be unraveled. The characters are also a huge reason why I care about the plot so much. The support conversation and side quests really help humanize everyone in your army. making me care a lot about their plight and motivation. Another reason why the characters band so much is because you can pair out characters together. As their bonds continue to foster, they'll eventually get married. The writing of this support conversation leading up to the payoff of marriage is really well done, and it's just wholesome in general. Secondly, the presentation of this game is pretty good. Even though I'll admit Fates and Echoes definitely have the upper hand in terms of graphics, Awakening is still a very good looking game with very high quality anime character designs and sprite work. One aspect I would like to highlight after revisiting this game for this list is the amazing UI. It is so much better than Tree Houses. The bottom screen is extremely helpful, and all of the customization and UI makes battling really easy and fast free. The soundtrack also deserves a huge shout out with many great tracks that rival some of the best RPGs out there. Thirdly, it is the immaculate gameplay. This is a tactical RPG through and through. Managing your army is an extremely important part of the game, from the micromanagement of what classes to pick for each character, to their pair-up partners, inventory management, who should get the EXP, the RNG rolls. The number of different builds available is staggering and absolutely insane. This is a very deep tactical strategy, perfect for hardcore players to sink their teeth into. At the end of the day, this is an insanely high quality game with so much content that can last up to hundreds and hundreds of hours, and is by far Nintendo's best published game on the 3DS. We have finally gotten down to my number 1. If you have known me personally, you have known what it is. Without further ado, it is Zero Escape Virtue's Last Reward, my personal favourite 3DS game ever. Virtue's Last Reward is a sequel to the cult classic 9 Hours, 9 Person, 9 Doors. It's a riveting mystery visual novel game that deals with a lot of sci-fi concepts and split timeline shenanigans. A little backstory for y'all. When I first started playing this game, it was during my internship period where I held a 9 to 5 office job. Every day when I come home after work, I would play a little bit of the game at night. By the time I got to the finale of the game, where the whole game set out of different mystery and plot points are resolved one after the other, I was completely floored. I couldn't put this game down at all. When I finished it, it was almost dawn and around 4:30 AM. I couldn't even sleep because of how good the ending was. I was searching forums and whatnot. In the end, I showed up to work with only 2 hours of sleep. If that recount sounds familiar to you at all, whether it's watching a gripping drama or anything, please let me know in the comment section below. Anyway, the story and plot of this game is just absolutely insane. Without spoiling anything too important, I'll just say this. Imagine you're playing a character that is stuck in a death/killing game with 8 other individuals that are extremely suspicious, and your goal is to escape. That's the gist of it. This is my favourite video game story of all time, and it can only be achieved in an interactive medium like video games. I know visual novel genre is a pretty niche genre, since most of the time you're just reading text and not really playing a game. However, if you're a fan of mystery, or games like Ace Attorney, Danganronpa, you have to try out the Zero Escape series for yourself. By the way, Virtue's Last Reward is the second game in the series, so make sure you play 999 first. It has been a blast during these 2 weeks of looking back on the 3DS and its library. There are just so many good memories I have with this console. If you'd like to see my 60 minutes retrospective on the 3DS, please click here. And with that, we have come to the end of my top 15 3DS games of all time. Please let me know your top 5 3DS games in the comment section below. I'd love to know and chat with you about it. So long guys, so long.